Sister Maria Cecilia sat by the window of the convent, her aged hands resting on the wooden table. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass, painting her wrinkled skin with colors of ruby and sapphire. At 93, her body had grown frail, but her mind remained as sharp as the day she'd entered these sacred walls. Her fingers moved slightly across the tabletop, pressing invisible keys in a silent melody only she could hear. The ancient convent of Santa Lucida stood nestled in the hills outside Florence, Italy. Its stone walls had witnessed centuries of prayers, and Sister Maria had contributed over 7 decades of devotion to those prayers. Most of the younger nuns knew her as the quiet elderly sister who tended the herb garden and spent hours in contemplation. None knew of the fire that still burned within her soul, a passion for music that had been buried for most of her life. As a young woman in the late 1940s, Maria had been considered a prodigy. Born to a humble family in a small village near Naples, her extraordinary talent had been discovered by a visiting music teacher who heard her playing on an old upright piano at the village church. The teacher had arranged a scholarship for her to study at the conservatory in Rome, where Maria's talent blossomed. Critics who attended student recitals spoke of her having hands touched by the divine and a rare emotional depth that belied her young age. But Maria had always felt another calling alongside her music. The pull toward religious life had grown stronger during her time at the conservatory, especially after losing her parents in quick succession. At 19, she had made the decision that shocked her teachers and the small circle of classical music enthusiasts who had been following her budding career. She would dedicate her life to God, joining the Sisters of Perpetual Devotion at Santa Lucida. Maria remembered the day she'd arrived at the convent gates, carrying only a small suitcase of belongings. She had been greeted by Mother Constanza, a stern woman with eyes that seemed to peer directly into one's soul. The Mother Superior had made the rules very clear from the beginning. "Our order focuses on silence and contemplation," she had said, her voice echoing in the sparse entrance hall. "Worldly talents are left at the door. They distract from true communion with God." When Mother Constanza discovered Maria's musical background, she had been particularly firm. "The piano is an instrument of performance, of pride. Here we humble ourselves before God. Your hands will serve Him in prayer and work, not in creating music that draws attention to yourself." And so, at 19, Maria had placed her hands on the Bible and taken her vows: poverty, chastity, obedience, knowing that obedience meant she would never touch a piano key again. The memories washed over Maria as she continued her silent practice by the window. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece she had been perfecting when she entered the convent. Her fingers still remembered every note, every subtle dynamic change. 7 decades of silence had not erased the music from her mind. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Sister Giovanna, one of the youngest nuns at barely 25, entered with a tray of tea. "I thought you might like some chamomile, Sister Maria," she said with a warm smile. "It's getting chilly by these old windows." Maria nodded gratefully. "You're very kind, child." Giovanna set down the tray and noticed Maria's hands. "Were you counting prayers on your fingers? I sometimes lose track myself." Maria hesitated before answering. In all these years, she had never spoken to anyone about her silent practice. "Not exactly, dear. Just an old habit." Giovanna sat down across from her, something rarely done in the presence of the convent's eldest sister. The younger nuns usually treated Maria with a reverence that bordered on fear, as if her age and decades of devotion made her somehow untouchable. But Giovanna had always been different, curious, open-hearted. "Sister Maria, is it true what Sister Beatrice said? That before you came here you were going to be a concert pianist?" Maria's heart quickened. The past was rarely discussed at Santa Lucida. "Sister Beatrice has a vivid imagination," she replied carefully. "But your hands," Giovanna persisted, gesturing to Maria's fingers, still poised above the table. "They were moving like this." The young nun mimicked a playing motion. A long silence filled the room. Maria looked out the window at the cypress trees swaying in the breeze. So many years of keeping this part of herself hidden. Perhaps at her age some truths could finally be spoken. "Yes," she said quietly. "I studied piano." "A lifetime ago." Giovanna's eyes widened. "Why did you stop? Was it because of joining the order?" Maria nodded. Mother Constanza believed that such talents were distractions from true devotion, and I took a vow of obedience. But Mother Constanza has been gone for 20 years, Giovanna said, confusion crossing her face. And her successor, Mother Veronica, held the same beliefs, as has every Mother Superior since. Maria sipped her tea. It's been the way of our order for centuries. Until now, Giovanna said with a hint of excitement in her voice. Sister Maria, haven't you heard? The council met yesterday. Mother Sophia has been appointed as our new leader. Maria had heard whispers about a new Mother Superior being chosen after the passing of Mother Gabriella last month, but she had paid little attention. At her age, she had seen many leaders come and go. The rules remained the same. Mother Sophia studied music before joining the order, Giovanna continued. She's been talking about incorporating more music into our worship services. For the first time in many years, Maria felt a flicker of something dangerous. Hope. She quickly extinguished it. The traditions of our order are not easily changed, child. But they are changing, Giovanna insisted. Mother Sophia has already ordered the old chapel piano to be tuned. It's been sitting unused in the West Wing for decades. Maria's hands trembled slightly, rattling her teacup against its saucer. The West Wing piano. She had discovered it during her 3rd year at the convent, covered with a heavy cloth in an unused prayer room. She had lifted the cover just once, running her fingers silently over the keys without pressing them, before being discovered by one of the older nuns who reported her to Mother Constanza. The penance had been severe, 3 days of silence and extra hours of labor in the laundry. Sister Maria, Giovanna said gently, reaching across to touch the older woman's hand. Could you play for us someday? I've never heard classical piano in person. Maria withdrew her hand. That's quite enough, Sister Giovanna. Even if changes are coming, I took vows of humility and obedience. Besides, she held up her gnarled hands. These old fingers wouldn't remember how, but they would remember. They remembered every day. After Giovanna left, Maria sat alone as the afternoon light faded from the window. She closed her eyes and allowed herself just for a moment to imagine the feeling of ivory keys beneath her fingertips again. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. The next morning, Maria rose before dawn as she had done every day for 7 decades. Her joints protested as she made her way to the chapel for morning prayers, the familiar path lit only by the dim glow of occasional wall lamps. The silent procession of nuns moved like shadows through the stone corridors. As they entered the chapel, Maria noticed something different. Against the far wall where once had stood only a simple wooden lectern, now stood a piano. Not a grand instrument, but a modest upright, its dark wood gleaming in the candlelight. Mother Sophia, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle presence, stood beside it. Sisters, she addressed the gathered nuns after opening prayers. As many of you know, I believe that music can be a powerful form of worship. God has blessed many with the gift of creating beauty through sound, just as others create beauty through words or works of service. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Change came slowly to Santa Lucida, and this was significant. I've had the old chapel piano restored, Mother Sophia continued. From now on, it will accompany our Sunday services and special celebrations. Maria kept her eyes fixed on her prayer book, afraid to look up, afraid that her face might reveal too much. Sister Lucia has volunteered to play for us, as she learned some basic hymns in her youth, Mother Sophia said. But I understand there may be others among us with musical training. If so, please speak with me privately. Throughout the day, Maria found herself walking past the chapel more often than necessary, glancing in at the piano each time. Once, when she was certain no one was around, she stepped inside and approached it. The chapel was silent except for the distant cooing of doves outside. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Maria stood before the piano, a relic from her past life now mysteriously reappearing in her present one. Her hand reached out, hovering just above the fallboard that covered the keys. So many years of discipline held her back, the ingrained belief that this desire was somehow impure, a distraction from true devotion. It was donated by a local family in the 1920s, came a voice from behind her. Maria startled and turned to find Mother Sophia watching her from the chapel entrance. I didn't mean to frighten you, Sister Maria, the new Mother Superior said, walking toward her. I saw you come in. I was just Curious, Maria said, withdrawing her hand. Mother Sophia smiled gently. Sister Giovanna mentioned you might have some experience with the piano. Is that true? Maria hesitated. Decades of silence weighed against the simple truth. Yes, Mother. Many years ago, before you took your vows, Mother Sophia asked. Maria nodded. Would you consider playing for us, even just for practice sessions? Sister Lucia's skills are very basic. The question hung in the air between them. Maria felt dizzy with conflicting emotions, desire, fear, hope. I haven't touched a piano in 70 years, Mother. My hands are old now and stiff with arthritis. But your heart remembers the music, doesn't it? Mother Sophia said quietly. Maria looked up, meeting the other woman's gaze. There was understanding there and something else, recognition. You too? Maria asked. Mother Sophia nodded. Violin. I played for 15 years before joining the order. Different convent, different rules, they encouraged my playing. When I was transferred here and saw how music had been removed from worship, it saddened me deeply. Mother Constanza believed it encouraged vanity, Maria said. Perhaps in some, Mother Sophia acknowledged, but for most it's simply another language of prayer. The next morning, Maria woke with a strange feeling in her chest, something she hadn't experienced in many years. It took her a moment to recognize it as excitement. The conversation with Mother Sophia had opened a door she'd long believed permanently sealed. After morning prayers, she lingered in the chapel, watching as Sister Lucia practiced simple hymns on the piano. The younger nun's playing was hesitant, her fingers moving stiffly across the keys. Maria noticed how she struggled with timing and often hit wrong notes. Part of her wanted to step forward to guide those uncertain hands, but decades of restraint held her back. She's doing her best, Mother Sophia said, suddenly appearing beside Maria. But I think we both know the instrument deserves more. Maria lowered her eyes. With practice, she'll improve. We have a special visitor coming next week, Mother Sophia continued. Bishop Romano will be here for our feast day celebration. It would be wonderful to have proper music for the service. The implication hung in the air between them. Maria felt her heart beating faster. I haven't played in 70 years, Mother. I wouldn't know where to begin, Mother Sophia smiled gently. Perhaps you could start by simply touching the keys again, just to see how it feels. Later that afternoon, when the chapel was empty, Maria returned. She stood before the piano for a long time, simply looking at it. Unlike the grand pianos she'd played in her youth, this was a modest upright, its wood dark with age, the ivory keys yellowed by time. Yet it called to her like an old friend. Slowly she lowered herself onto the bench. Her joints protested. She was not as limber as she once had been. The bench felt hard beneath her, so different from the padded seats she remembered from the conservatory. But none of that mattered when she lifted the fallboard and saw the keys waiting for her. Maria reached out, her hand trembling slightly. Her fingers, twisted now with arthritis, hovered above the white and black keys. Then, almost of their own accord, they descended. The first note rang out in the empty chapel, a middle C, clear and true. The sound startled her, and she quickly looked around, half expecting Mother Constanza's ghost to appear and scold her. But there was only silence, and then the fading resonance of that single note. She pressed another key, then another. Simple notes at first, disconnected and tentative. But soon, almost without conscious thought, her fingers began to find patterns to remember. A simple C major scale, ascending and descending. Her left hand joined in, adding bass notes. The pain in her joints was immediate, a sharp reminder of her age and the years of disuse. But there was something else too, a feeling that overshadowed the pain. Joy. Maria didn't attempt anything complex that first day. Just scales and simple exercises, the kind she'd done as a child when first learning. Even these were challenging now, her fingers stiff and uncooperative. But for 20 minutes she played, tears streaming silently down her face as she reconnected with the part of herself she'd buried for so long. She didn't hear Sister Giovanna enter the chapel, didn't know she was being watched until she finished a simple melodic exercise and heard a soft gasp. Sister Maria. That was beautiful. Maria's hands jerked away from the keys as if they'd suddenly turned hot. Mother Sophia suggested I might. Giovanna rushed forward, her face alight with excitement. Please don't stop because of me. I've never heard anyone play like that before. Like what? Maria asked, confused. She'd done nothing but the most basic exercises, things any first-year piano student could manage. With such feeling, Giovanna said, struggling to find the right words. Even though it was just simple notes, it was like you were speaking through them. Maria felt a flush of embarrassment, but also a flicker of pride she hadn't felt in decades. "These old fingers don't work like they used to," she said, flexing her hands to ease the ache. "But they remember more than I expected." Over the next few days, Maria established a new routine. After morning prayers and her duties in the herb garden, she would spend an hour at the piano while most of the other sisters were occupied with their own tasks. She started with simple exercises, gradually increasing their complexity as her fingers began to loosen up. The pain was considerable. Her joints, stiff with age and arthritis, protested the unfamiliar movements. Some evenings her hands would be so swollen and painful that Sister Giovanna would bring her warm compresses to ease the aching. But each day her fingers moved more freely, remembered more clearly. By the 5th day she attempted her first real piece of music, a simple Bach minuet she had learned as a child. Her playing was halting at first, with many wrong notes and pauses as she struggled to recall the melody. But by the 3rd attempt, something remarkable happened. Her muscle memory, dormant for 7 decades, began to awaken. What Maria didn't realize was that her private practice sessions had drawn an audience. Sisters would find reasons to pass by the chapel, pausing outside to listen. Even the kitchen staff, lay people who worked at the convent, found excuses to be near the chapel during her practice time. She was going to be famous. You know. Sister Beatrice, one of the older nuns who had been at Santa Lucida when Maria arrived, told a group of younger sisters as they listened from the corridor. Her teachers said she could have played in concert halls across Europe. Why would she give that up? Asked a novice who had only recently joined the order. Sister Beatrice shrugged. The calling of God is stronger than any earthly ambition. But sometimes, I wondered if forcing her to stop playing entirely was God's will or just human stubbornness. On the day before the bishop's visit, Mother Sophia came to Maria's room. The elderly nun was resting, her hands wrapped in cool cloths to ease the swelling. "How are you feeling, Sister Maria?" Mother Sophia asked, sitting beside her. "Old," Maria replied with a small smile, "but I'm alive. More alive than I've felt in years." Mother Sophia nodded. "Your playing has improved remarkably in just a few days." The sisters talk of little else. Maria looked up in surprise. "They've heard me? Did you think they wouldn't notice? This convent has been without music for so long. Your playing is like rain after a drought." Maria looked down at her hands, at the swollen knuckles and blue veins visible beneath paper-thin skin. "I'm not what I was, Mother. Not even close. None of us are what we once were," Mother Sophia said gently. "But perhaps we can still be more than what we've allowed ourselves to become." She paused. "Would you consider playing something during the bishop's visit tomorrow? Just one piece during the service?" Maria felt a flutter of panic. Playing alone in an empty chapel was one thing. Playing for the bishop, for the entire community, that was something else entirely. "I couldn't," she said. "My playing is full of mistakes. And my hands, they can't manage more than 20 minutes before the pain becomes too much." "One short piece is all I ask," Mother Sophia said. "Something simple, something that speaks to your heart. The bishop is a lover of music. I think it would please him greatly." That night Maria slept poorly, her mind filled with conflicting emotions. She thought of her younger self, the girl who had played for audiences without fear, whose fingers had danced across the keys with confidence and precision. That girl was gone, replaced by an old woman with arthritic hands and fading strength. Yet something of her remained. The music had never truly left her, had lived within her through all those silent years. In the gray hours before dawn, Maria made her decision. The next morning, the convent was abuzz with preparations for the bishop's visit. Special candles were lit in the chapel, the best linens brought out for the altar. The sisters wore their formal habits, crisp and freshly ironed. Bishop Romano arrived mid-morning, a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes. He greeted each sister warmly, taking time to speak with even the youngest novices. When he came to Maria, he took her gnarled hands in his. "Sister Maria Cecilia," he said, "Mother Sophia has told me you've rediscovered your gift for music." Maria blushed. "It's no gift anymore, Your Excellency. Just an old woman's fumbling memories," the bishop smiled. "God's gifts don't diminish with age, sister. They merely transform." The service was traditional. following the rhythms and rituals that had remained unchanged at Santa Lucida for centuries. But when it came time for the hymns instead of the usual a cappella singing, Sister Lucia played a simple accompaniment on the piano. Her playing was basic but adequate, and the bishop nodded appreciatively at the addition of music to the worship. After communion, Mother Sophia stood and addressed the congregation. "Your Excellency, sisters and friends, today we are blessed with a special offering. Sister Maria Cecilia, who joined our order more than 70 years ago, was once a gifted pianist. For most of her life here she has not played, but now she will offer a piece in honor of your visit, Bishop Romano." A murmur went through the chapel. Many of the visiting guests had heard rumors about the elderly nun who had been playing in recent days, but few expected her to perform publicly. Maria rose slowly from her seat, her heart pounding so hard she feared everyone could hear it. She made her way to the piano, aware of every eye upon her, of the silence that had fallen over the chapel. She sat at the piano, adjusting her habit around her, and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment she closed her eyes, gathering her courage. Then, with a deep breath, she began to play. She had chosen Chopin's Prelude in E minor, a piece that was technically within her current abilities yet profound in its emotional impact. The opening notes filled the chapel, hesitant at first, then growing in confidence as her fingers remembered their purpose. The chapel fell completely silent as Maria's fingers moved across the keys. The Chopin Prelude began softly, almost tentatively, but with each measure her confidence grew. The gentle, melancholic melody filled every corner of the stone chapel, wrapping around the pillars and floating up to the vaulted ceiling. Maria's arthritic hands moved with surprising grace. Yes, there were occasional hesitations, a few missed notes, but these small imperfections only added to the emotional impact of her playing. This wasn't the technical perfection of a concert pianist at their peak. This was something far more powerful. It was the sound of a soul that had kept music locked inside for 70 years, finally set free. As she played, Maria forgot about the bishop, forgot about the sisters watching her, forgot about everything except the music itself. Time seemed to slow down, and she entered that sacred space that she had remembered in dreams for decades, the place where only the music existed. Her body might be old, her fingers stiff and painful, but in this moment, she transcended those limitations. The prelude was short, barely 2 minutes long, but in those 2 minutes, Maria conveyed a lifetime of emotion. When the final notes faded into silence, she kept her hands hovering over the keys for a moment, reluctant to break the spell. Then she became aware of the silence behind her. Had she played that badly? Had she embarrassed herself in the convent? Slowly, she turned on the bench to face the congregation. What she saw took her breath away. Bishop Romano had tears streaming down his face. Sister Giovanna was openly weeping. Many of the other sisters sat with hands clasped over their hearts, eyes closed as if in deep prayer. Even the stern Sister Beatrice, who rarely showed emotion, was dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. For several heartbeats, the silence held. Then Bishop Romano stood, his hands coming together in applause. One by one, the others joined him. The sisters, the visitors, everyone in the chapel rising to their feet. The sound of their clapping bounced off the stone walls, creating a thunderous ovation that was entirely unprecedented in the sacred space. Maria sat frozen, overwhelmed. In all her years at Santa Lucida, she had never heard applause in the chapel. Such a display would have been considered inappropriate, even disrespectful. Yet here was the bishop himself leading this emotional response. Mother Sophia came to her side, helping her to stand. "Thank you, Sister Maria," she said softly. "That was a true offering of the heart." The bishop approached next, taking Maria's hands in his. "My dear sister," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "in all my years attending services, I have rarely felt the presence of God as strongly as I did in your music just now." Maria lowered her eyes. "It was nothing special, Your Excellency. Just an old woman remembering. It was everything," he replied. "Pure, honest, and deeply moving." He turned to Mother Sophia. "You've uncovered a treasure here. This gift should not remain hidden within these walls." The celebration meal that followed was filled with animated conversation. Much of it centered on Maria's performance. She sat quietly at her place, uncomfortable with the attention, but warmed by the genuine appreciation. Her hands ached terribly now, the pain from her arthritis flaring after the exertion, but it was a pain she welcomed. It was the cost of reconnecting with her music, and she would gladly pay it. After the meal, Bishop Romano asked to speak with her privately. They walked slowly in the convent garden, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the neatly tended paths. "Sister Maria," the bishop began, "Mother Sophia has told me something of your background. You studied at the Rome Conservatory?" "Yes, Your Excellency. A very long time ago. Under Professor Valenti, I believe." Maria looked up in surprise. "Yes, how did you know that?" The bishop smiled. "Because my father was a pianist who also studied with Valenti. He spoke often of a young woman who was Valenti's star pupil, someone the professor believed would become one of the great pianists of her generation. A student who suddenly left to join a convent." He paused. "I believe that was you." Maria felt a flush of embarrassment. "Professor Valenti was too generous in his assessment." "I don't think so," the bishop replied. "What I heard today, even with the limitations of age and lack of practice, was extraordinary. I can only imagine what you might have become." They walked in silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. "May I ask why?" the bishop finally said. "Why did you give it up?" It was a question Maria had asked herself countless times over the decades. "I felt called to religious life," she said simply. "And at that time, at least in this order, the two callings couldn't exist together." "And do you regret it? The path not taken?" Maria considered this carefully. "I regret not being allowed to keep music as part of my devotion. I think now that was a mistake. Cutting off that part of myself didn't make me a better nun, just an incomplete one." She looked up at the convent walls, golden in the late afternoon light. "But no, I don't regret choosing this life. It has given me much, even with that piece missing." The bishop nodded thoughtfully. "Well, it seems that piece has found its way back to you, even if later than it should have." "At my age, there's not much I can do with it now," Maria said with a small smile. "But yes, it brings me joy to play again, even with these old hands." "Perhaps there's more to be done than you imagine," the bishop replied. "Sister Maria, would you consider playing at the cathedral's charity concert next month? It's an event to raise funds for the children's hospital." Maria stopped walking, shocked by the suggestion. "Play in public? Outside the convent?" "Your Excellency, I couldn't possibly—" "You already have played in public," he reminded her gently, "and moved everyone who heard you. Think of the good it could do, not just the funds raised, but the inspiration your story could provide." "My story? A woman who kept music alive in her heart for 70 years despite not being allowed to play. Who, in her 90s, can still create beauty that touches the soul. Don't you think people might find hope in that?" Maria looked down at her gnarled hands. "These hands can barely manage 2 minutes of Chopin without making mistakes. I would embarrass myself and disappoint your audience." "I disagree," the bishop said firmly, "but I won't press you further today. Please just consider it. Pray on it if you will." That night, after evening prayers, Maria sat by her window looking out at the stars. Her mind was in turmoil. The day had been overwhelming, from the terror of performing in public to the unexpected applause from the bishop's revelations about her past to his startling invitation. Play at the cathedral? The very thought made her heart race with anxiety. Yet there was something else there too, a flicker of the old excitement she'd felt as a young pianist preparing for recitals. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Sister Giovanna carrying a small jar. "Arnica salve for your hands," she explained, entering the small room. "I noticed they were swollen at dinner." "Thank you, dear," Maria said, accepting the jar gratefully. Her joints were indeed throbbing with pain. Giovanna helped apply the salve, her gentle fingers massaging it into Maria's aching knuckles. "Everyone is still talking about your playing," she said. Sister Teresa said she felt like she was hearing the voice of an angel. Maria shook her head. "Hardly that. Just an old woman remembering happier times." "Was today not a happy time?" Giovanna asked, looking up with genuine curiosity. Maria considered this. The anxiety before playing, the pain afterward. But between those moments there had been that transcendent feeling of connection, of purpose. "Yes," she admitted. "Yes, it was very happy indeed. The bishop asked you to play at the cathedral, didn't he?" Giovanna's eyes were bright with excitement. News traveled fast in the small convent. "He did, but I haven't agreed to anything," Maria cautioned. "It's one thing to play here among family, Quite another to perform in the cathedral. But you'll consider it? Maria sighed. I told him I would pray on it. Well, I'll pray too, Giovanna said decisively. I'll pray that you say yes. After the young nun left, Maria prepared for bed, her mind still swirling with the day's events. As she lay in the darkness, she found herself doing something she hadn't done in decades, imagining herself sitting at a grand piano on a stage, music pouring from her fingers as an audience listened in rapt attention. It was both thrilling and terrifying. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Word of Maria's playing had spread beyond the convent walls, and several local visitors came specifically to hear her at the daily services, where she now played simple accompaniments to the hymns. Mother Sophia carefully managed these visits, protecting Maria from too much attention, but it was clear that interest in the elderly pianist was growing. A week after the bishop's visit, a package arrived for Maria. Inside was a bottle of specially formulated liniment for arthritis pain, along with a note from Bishop Romano. For those precious hands, my offer stands. The cathedral awaits your answer. Maria applied the liniment daily, and to her surprise, it did help somewhat. Her range of motion improved slightly, and the pain after playing became more manageable. She began to practice longer each day, gradually adding more complex pieces to her repertoire. Her muscle memory continued to awaken, bringing back pieces she had learned in her youth: Bach preludes, Mozart sonatas, and more Chopin. One afternoon, as she worked through a particularly difficult passage of a Beethoven sonata, she heard Mother Sophia's voice behind her. You're playing wonderfully, the Mother Superior said. Much better than last week. Maria shook her head, still full of mistakes and hesitations. But fewer each day, Mother Sophia pointed out. She sat beside Maria on the piano bench. Have you made a decision about the bishop's invitation? Maria's fingers rested on the keys. I'm still uncertain. Part of me wants to try, but you're afraid, Mother Sophia finished for her. Yes, Maria admitted. Afraid of failing, of embarrassing myself. Afraid my hands won't cooperate. Afraid of the attention. She looked down at her gnarled fingers. Besides, what would I even play? Everything I manage now is just fragments, pieces that I can barely string together. What about the piece you played for the bishop? The Chopin prelude? It was beautiful. It's too short for a concert performance, barely 2 minutes. Mother Sophia was quiet for a moment, thinking, what if you played several short pieces? Things that wouldn't strain your hands too much if played one after another, with short breaks between? Maria considered this. That might be possible. And what if Sister Giovanna helped you prepare? She could turn pages for you, help you with the practical aspects. The idea was beginning to seem less impossible. I would need to practice more seriously with a real program in mind. Then you'll do it? Mother Sophia asked, a smile spreading across her face. Maria took a deep breath. I'll try, she said. God knows whether I'll succeed, but I'll try. That evening, Maria wrote a letter to Bishop Romano, accepting his invitation but with conditions. She would play only a short program of pieces that her hands could manage, and she would need Sister Giovanna to assist her. She sealed the letter with trembling fingers, both excited and terrified by what she had just committed to do. She was 93 years old, and somehow, she was preparing for her first public piano recital in more than 7 decades. The news spread quickly through the convent that Sister Maria had accepted the bishop's invitation to play at the cathedral. The sisters' reactions ranged from excitement to concern. Some worried about Maria's health, noting how she often had to stop playing when the pain in her hands became too severe. Others saw it as a well-deserved recognition of her talent and dedication. Sister Giovanna took her role as Maria's assistant very seriously. She rearranged her duties to free up time for helping with preparations, and could often be found in the chapel, sitting beside Maria at the piano, turning pages or timing practice sessions to ensure the elderly nun didn't strain herself. 20 minutes is enough for today, Giovanna would say firmly, setting a small egg timer beside the music. Mother Sophia says we must be careful not to overdo it. Maria would protest but secretly appreciated the young woman's care. The truth was, her stamina was limited. Even with the special liniment from the bishop and regular warm compresses, her hands could only manage short periods of playing before the pain became distracting. Together, they worked on assembling a program that would showcase Maria's abilities while accommodating her limitations. They chose 5 short pieces: the Chopin Prelude in E minor that she had played for the bishop, a Bach Prelude in C major, a simple Mozart Andante, a Schubert Moment musical, and finally, the first movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Each piece was relatively brief, and they planned short pauses between them to give Maria's hands a moment of rest. "It's still not very long," Maria fretted after they had timed a complete run-through, barely 15 minutes of music. "Will people feel cheated?" "Absolutely not," Mother Sophia assured her. "The bishop has explained that you'll play a short program. Everyone understands the circumstances." She smiled gently. "Besides, it's the quality that matters, not the quantity. And what you play, Sister Maria, touches the heart." 2 weeks before the concert, a journalist from the local newspaper came to the convent. Bishop Romano had suggested a small article to publicize the charity event, focusing on Maria's story. The journalist, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, sat with Maria in the convent garden. "How does it feel," she asked, "to return to the piano after 70 years? Maria considered the question. "Like finding a piece of myself that I thought was lost forever," she finally said. "It's both familiar and strange, like meeting an old friend who has changed as I have changed but whose soul I still recognize." The journalist scribbled in her notebook. "And are you nervous about playing at the cathedral?" Maria laughed softly. "Terrified," she admitted. "These old hands don't always do what I ask of them anymore. But I've made peace with that. Whatever happens, I will play with my whole heart." "Your story is quite remarkable," the journalist said. "A promising career set aside for religious life, 7 decades of musical silence, and now this unexpected return to the piano at 93. Do you have any regrets?" It was the same question the bishop had asked. "I regret that I wasn't allowed to keep music as part of my devotion," Maria said honestly. "But I've learned that it's never too late to reclaim what's precious to you. That's something I'd like people to take from my story." The article appeared 3 days later. It was a small piece tucked in the middle of the newspaper, but it painted a touching portrait of the elderly nun who had kept music alive in her heart for 70 years. The final line quoted Maria directly: "God gives each of us gifts. Using them at any age is how we return that blessing to the world." What no one expected was how quickly the story would spread. A reader sent the article to her cousin who worked at a national newspaper. He found it intriguing and called the convent to request an interview with Sister Maria. Then a Catholic magazine picked up the story, focusing on how the new Mother Superior had changed the convent's approach to music and worship. 1 week before the concert, a television crew arrived, hoping to film a short segment about Maria for the evening news. "This is becoming rather a lot," Mother Sophia said worriedly as they watched the crew setting up cameras in the chapel. "Are you comfortable with all this attention, Sister Maria?" Maria, who had just finished her morning practice, flexed her aching fingers. "Not entirely," she admitted. "But Bishop Romano says the publicity is helping ticket sales for the charity concert. If my story can help raise funds for the children's hospital, then I can tolerate a bit of discomfort." The television segment aired 2 days later. It was brief but powerful, showing Maria at the piano, her gnarled hands moving with surprising grace across the keys, her face serene as she played a fragment of the Moonlight Sonata. The reporter's voiceover told her story with respect and warmth. By the day of the concert, every ticket had been sold. The cathedral, which could seat nearly 1,000 people, would be full. "A full house," Giovanna told Maria excitedly as they prepared to leave the convent. "The bishop says they could have sold twice as many tickets if they had the space." Maria felt a wave of panic. 1,000 people? She had imagined a few hundred at most. For a moment she considered backing out, pleading illness. But then she thought of the children who would benefit from the funds raised and steeled herself. "Well, they've come to support the hospital," she said, trying to convince herself as much as Giovanna, not to hear an old woman fumble through Chopin. The drive to the cathedral was short but intense for Maria. She hadn't left the convent in years, and the busy streets of the city overwhelmed her senses. Cars honking, people hurrying along sidewalks, shop windows blazing with light. It was a stark contrast to the quiet routine of Santa Lucida. They entered through a side door, avoiding the crowds gathering at the main entrance. Bishop Romano was waiting for them, his face lighting up when he saw Maria. "Sister Maria, welcome. Everything is prepared." He gestured toward a small room off the main sanctuary. "There's a space for you to rest before the performance." The piano has been tuned specially for tonight. Maria nodded, her throat too dry to speak. The reality of what she was about to do was sinking in. In less than an hour, she would be playing for a cathedral full of strangers, her first real public performance since she was a teenager. Sister Giovanna stayed by her side, a calming presence in the midst of the unfamiliar bustle. She helped Maria settle in the preparation room, applied a final dose of the special liniment to her hands, and led her through gentle stretching exercises for her fingers. "Remember what Mother Sophia said," Giovanna murmured as they heard the cathedral filling with people. "Just play as you do in our chapel. Play for God, not for them." Maria closed her eyes and tried to calm her racing heart. "I'm too old for this kind of excitement," she said with a shaky laugh. "You're exactly the right age," Giovanna replied firmly. "Your music has had 70 years to deepen in your heart. Now it's ready to be shared." When it was time, Bishop Romano himself came to escort her to the sanctuary. The cathedral had fallen silent in anticipation. Maria leaned heavily on her cane as she walked, acutely aware of her age and frailty. Sister Giovanna walked beside her, carrying her sheet music, though Maria had memorized every note. The cathedral was magnificent, soaring stone arches, stained glass windows now dark with the evening, hundreds of candles casting a warm glow over the sea of faces. As Maria appeared, a murmur went through the crowd, followed by applause. She blinked in the unexpected brightness of the lights, feeling disoriented by the vastness of the space and the number of people. The grand piano waited at the front, its lid raised, its black surface gleaming in the light. It was much larger than the upright she had been practicing on, and for a moment Maria faltered. Could her small frame, her fragile hands, do justice to such an instrument? But then she remembered something Professor Valenti had told her long ago. "The piano is not your opponent, Maria. It is your voice. It will say what you ask it to say if you speak to it with conviction." Taking a deep breath, she made her way to the bench. Sister Giovanna helped her sit, arranged her music on the stand, though Maria knew she wouldn't need it, and then stepped back, giving Maria's shoulder a gentle squeeze of encouragement. The cathedral was utterly silent now. Maria placed her hands on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath her fingertips. She closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself, then began to play the Bach prelude in C major. The sound that filled the cathedral was crystalline, each note perfectly clear in the magnificent acoustics of the space. The Bach was a piece of mathematical precision, a foundation of notes that built one upon another in perfect balance. It had been one of the first pieces she had learned as a child, and her fingers moved through it with the certainty of long familiarity. When she finished the Bach, there was a moment of silence, then a wave of applause. Maria allowed herself a small smile. 1 down, 4 to go. She moved to the Mozart Andante next, a gentle, flowing piece that showcased her sensitivity to dynamics, the way she could make certain notes sing out, while others provided a soft cushion of sound beneath. Her hands were holding up well, the pain present but manageable. The Schubert followed, a piece with more emotional range, alternating between moments of delicate introspection and passages of greater intensity. By now, Maria had forgotten the audience, forgotten the cameras that she knew were recording the performance, forgotten everything except the music itself. For the Chopin prelude, she closed her eyes entirely, allowing the melancholy beauty of the piece to flow through her without visual distractions. The notes hung in the air of the cathedral like a prayer made audible. Finally, it was time for the Beethoven. The famous opening of the Moonlight Sonata, those gentle triplets that created a hypnotic, dreamy atmosphere. This was the longest and most challenging piece in her program, requiring the most endurance from her hands. But Maria had saved her strength for this moment. As she played, something remarkable happened. The pain in her hands seemed to recede, replaced by a sense of warmth and flow. Her fingers found the keys with increasing confidence, bringing out the haunting melody with a depth of feeling that came from a lifetime of carrying this music within her. When the final notes of the Beethoven faded away, there was a moment of complete silence in the cathedral. Maria sat still, her hands resting on the keys, her eyes closed, savoring the last echoes of the sound. Then the audience erupted. The applause was thunderous, filling the vast space with a wave of sound that seemed to lift Maria from the bench. People were standing, some wiping tears from their eyes, others smiling broadly as they clapped. Sister Giovanna hurried to Maria's side as the applause continued to fill the cathedral. The elderly nun seemed overwhelmed, her eyes wide with surprise at the reaction of the audience. Giovanna helped her to her feet, and together they faced the standing ovation. Bishop Romano approached with a bouquet of white lilies and presented them to Maria. She accepted them with trembling hands, her eyes filling with tears. The bishop then raised his hands and gradually the applause died down. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice echoing through the cathedral, "we have witnessed something extraordinary tonight. Not just beautiful music, but a testament to the human spirit, to its resilience, its patience, and its capacity for joy even after long periods of silence." He turned to Maria. "Sister Maria Cecilia, on behalf of everyone here, and the children who will benefit from your generosity, thank you." Another wave of applause washed over them. Maria, still clutching the lilies, leaned toward the microphone that had been set up near the piano. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice soft but clear. "The music has always been God's gift. I'm just grateful for the chance to share it, even at this late hour of my life." As she and Giovanna made their way back down the aisle, people reached out to touch her hands, to murmur words of appreciation. Maria nodded and smiled, though she was beginning to feel the exhaustion setting in. The emotional and physical demands of the performance had drained her more than she had expected. Back in the preparation room, she sank gratefully into a chair. Her hands were throbbing now, the pain returning with a vengeance. But it was a pain mixed with satisfaction, the kind of ache that comes from effort well spent. "You were magnificent," Giovanna said, her face glowing with pride. "I've never heard you play so beautifully." "It was the piano," Maria replied modestly. "A far better instrument than our old upright at Santa Lucida. And the acoustics in the cathedral, they made everything sound grander than it was." "Nonsense," came a new voice from the doorway. It was a well-dressed older gentleman with silver hair and an elegant bearing. It was the player, not the piano. Bishop Romano entered behind the man. "Sister Maria, may I introduce Professor Donati? He teaches at the conservatory now, but many years ago he was also a student of Professor Valenti." Maria's eyes widened in recognition. "Antonio Donati, the little boy who played at the spring recital in 1947? The man smiled broadly. "The very same, though not so little anymore. I'm honored that you remember me, Sister Maria. Valenti spoke of you often, you know. You were his great disappointment, the student who should have had a brilliant career but chose a different path. He kept the program from your final recital on his wall until the day he died." Maria felt a complex mixture of emotions, nostalgia, a touch of regret, but also a quiet certainty about the choices she had made. "He was a wonderful teacher," she said. "I've thought of him often over the years." "He would have been proud of what you played tonight," Professor Donati said. "Especially the Beethoven. You brought something to it that few of my students manage, a patience, a depth that can't be taught, only lived." More visitors came to offer congratulations. The journalist who had written the first article about Maria, the director of the Children's Hospital, who reported that the concert had raised more than triple their usual amount. A young piano student who shyly asked for Maria's blessing. Through it all, Maria sat quietly, accepting their kind words with humility. But as the evening wore on, her exhaustion became more evident. Mother Sophia, who had attended the concert with several other sisters, eventually stepped in. "Sister Maria needs to rest now," she said firmly. "It's been a long and wonderful evening, but she's not accustomed to such excitement." The drive back to the convent was quiet. Maria, wrapped in a warm shawl, dozed against Giovanna's shoulder. The excitement of the performance had given way to a bone-deep weariness, yet there was a smile on her face even in sleep. The next few days passed in a blur for Maria. She slept more than usual, her body demanding rest after the extraordinary exertion. Her hands were especially painful, and the convent's infirmarian prescribed warm soaks and gentle massage. Sister Giovanna took on this task with loving care, working the stiffness from Maria's joints each morning and evening. Meanwhile, the world outside the convent walls was buzzing with the story of the piano nun, as the newspapers had dubbed her. The video of her performance, which had been shared online, had attracted hundreds of thousands of views. People were touched not just by the beauty of her playing, but by what her story represented, the idea that it's never too late to reclaim a neglected part of oneself. A week after the concert, a large package arrived for Maria. Inside was a state-of-the-art digital piano with weighted keys that required less pressure than a traditional piano, making it easier for arthritic hands to play. It came with headphones so Maria could practice without disturbing others, and a note from the manufacturer saying they had been moved by her story and wanted to support her continued playing. "This is too much," Maria protested when she saw the gift. "I can't accept such an expensive instrument." "Of course you can," Mother Sophia replied. "We'll put it in your room so you can play whenever you wish without having to walk to the chapel. Think of it as a tool for your continuing ministry." "Ministry?" Maria looked confused. "Yes, ministry," Mother Sophia said with a smile. "You've touched many lives with your music and your story, Sister Maria. That's a form of ministry too." Letters began to arrive at the convent, dozens and then hundreds of them. People from all walks of life wrote to share how Maria's performance had affected them. An elderly man who had given up painting due to arthritis but was now inspired to try again. A middle-aged woman who had abandoned her love of dancing after having children and was now taking classes again. A teenager who had been ready to quit piano lessons but found new motivation in Maria's perseverance. Maria read each letter with a mixture of wonder and humility. She had never imagined that her small act of courage could ripple out to touch so many lives. Professor Donati visited the convent again, this time with a proposal. He wanted to establish a scholarship in Maria's name at the conservatory, specifically for older students who were returning to music after a long absence. There are many people who set aside their musical studies for various reasons. Family obligations, financial constraints, health issues, he explained. But as you've shown, it's never too late to reconnect with music. This scholarship would help make that possible for deserving students. Maria was deeply moved by the idea. "I would be honored," she said. "But I have no money to contribute to such a scholarship." "The funding is already arranged," Professor Donati assured her. "Several donors have come forward after hearing your story. All we need is your permission to use your name, and perhaps your willingness to meet with the recipients occasionally." And so, at the age of 93, Sister Maria Cecilia found herself with an unexpected new purpose. Twice a month, when her health permitted, she would sit at her digital piano and play for a small audience of music students or aspiring pianists who had returned to their art after long detours. She would share her story and listen to theirs, offering encouragement and understanding. Despite her advanced age, Maria continued to improve as a pianist. The daily practice on her new, more forgiving instrument allowed her to regain some of the technical facility she had lost. She would never play with the precision and power she might have had as a young concert pianist, but what she lacked in technical perfection, she more than made up for in emotional depth and wisdom. On her 94th birthday, the Sisters of Santa Lucida surprised her with a small concert of their own. Under Sister Giovanna's direction, they had been secretly learning to sing several of Maria's favorite pieces, simple arrangements that complemented her piano playing. As Maria played and the sisters' voices rose in harmony, tears streamed down her face. For 7 decades, she had kept her music locked inside, a private conversation with God. Now it had become a bridge connecting her to others, a way of sharing both her faith and her humanity. Later that evening, as Giovanna helped her prepare for bed, Maria reflected on the unexpected turn her life had taken in its final chapter. "When I entered the convent, I thought I was giving up music forever," she said. "I never imagined that God would give it back to me like this at the very end." "Perhaps that was always the plan," Giovanna suggested. "Perhaps your music needed those 70 years of silence to become what it is now." Maria considered this idea. That's a comforting thought, that nothing is truly lost, just waiting for its moment. She lived to see 3 recipients of the scholarship that bore her name. Each of them came to the convent to play for her. A retired teacher who had returned to the cello after 40 years, a former businessman who had rediscovered his love for classical guitar, a grandmother who was finally pursuing her dream of mastering the violin. Maria listened to each of them with genuine interest and offered the same advice. Play with your whole heart. Technical perfection matters less than emotional truth, and it's never too late to make beautiful music. In her 96th year, Maria's health began to decline. Her heart, which had beaten strongly through nearly a century of life, was growing weaker. She spent more time resting, though she still played her piano daily, even if just for a few minutes. On a bright spring morning, the sisters found her in her room, seated at her piano. Her hands rested gently on the keys and there was a peaceful smile on her face. She had passed away as she would have wished, with music as her final companion. The funeral was held at the cathedral where she had given her famous performance. Hundreds attended, including all 3 scholarship recipients who played at the service. Bishop Romano spoke of how Maria's life had been a testament to the idea that it's never too late to honor one's gifts. Sister Maria Cecilia's story reminds us that some melodies take a lifetime to find their fullest expression, he said. Her music now lives on, not just in recordings or memories, but in the courage she has inspired in others to reclaim their own forgotten dreams. As the final notes of the service faded, many present felt that they could almost hear the echo of Maria's playing, those gnarled hands creating beauty against all odds. That spirit finding its voice after decades of silence. Her legacy continued through the scholarship program, which grew to support dozens of returning musicians over the years. And at Santa Lucida, the piano remained a central part of worship, a lasting reminder of the elderly nun who had taught them all that patience, perseverance, and passion can create unexpected harmony, even in life's final movement.